the functionality we're going to cover, it's actually related to mediations, to how mediation is done, and a very specific part of mediation, which is um, the part where a price is resolved, which in a great deal is related to how a product is resolved. So let's start first with um, a brief introduction of what is it that we understand mediation to be in jBilling. Um, so mediation for us, it's the process of taking a CDR, taking an event that has happened outside the billing system. We take that, which is a record with a lot of different fields, a lot of data that the system that knows about that service, for example, a switch for a telephone call, um, that system saves all that data, so other systems like a billing system can use that data to do something else, for example, to do to bill the customer for that service. So the mediation process in jBilling then is going to go through a series of steps to get that data, that record, that event, um, incorporated into the billing system with potentially charges that will go into the customer invoice, into the next invoice. So one of the things that has to be done is guide the CDR to an account. So determine which customer is responsible for that phone call. Determine a date when this happened. Resolve a product, and this is a very important part because this is something that we're gonna look more into it in this presentation. Resolve the quantity and price it. So if I have this piece of data I see here on the left, then the the this might, you see that there is, it's answered. This is actually a phone call done with an asterisk switch. So there is an answered field. This means that the call was answered, and it has the amount of time, 60 seconds, and so on. So we need to decide what is this, who did it, and the what in this case would be a phone call. Well, but a phone call can be all sorts of things as well. It could be a long distance call. It could be a local call, or it could be a call that has a very particular type of pricing because of the plan that I'm in. So there's a lot of things that we need to do out of this piece of data in order to get the jBilling database updated correctly. Okay, so just to review, where is it that we are with jBilling 3.3 and previous jBilling versions? What is it that we have for doing this, for resolving a product, for eventually defining a price for an event? So we have a fairly simple um, rate card functionality that has these four columns. So if you assign to a product, say the product phone call, you assign the pricing model rate card, because rate cards in jBilling are just pricing models. If you do that, then jBilling will analyze the phone number that was called and is going to find a match in that long, potentially long table, and find the right price for it. So if the number called was 1604 1234 1234, is going to go through this table and decide, oh, this is the number that was called, is Vancouver, and the price is 15 cents a minute. So that's what we could do so far with jBilling without having to write any special code. And I want to show this to you. I have here a version of jBilling that I think is 3.1 or 2. Doesn't matter. It's all the same for this. Let's try to log in. And let's configure a rate card so you can take a look to what is it that we have See, configuration rate cards. I can add a new rate card. I can then um, see if I have the example rate card here. So now I am creating a rate card. It's there, and I can see the rates that that rate card has. So my CSV file that I can upload has to have these 4 columns, and it cannot have more than this. It has to have a match field with digits that are going to be used to find the right row here to determine a price. The comment really doesn't matter. It's just so it's easier to then understand what is in here. The system really doesn't use it for anything. Then when I create a product, I can then assign to that product, say I have a minutes category and I have an international minutes product. I can assign to this product a pricing model that is a rate card. And then I can select the rate card that I want, which is the one I just created. And with this and a couple of extra configuration, I can easily start mediating simple simple traffic that is just using one column to do a best match find based on a table. So that's where we were. That doesn't mean that we didn't have implementations where more complexity was required. However, that was always on the back of having some custom development. Now, this actually worked quite well for fixed lines, but imagine for mobile operations, then there's so much more to do than just look up the destination of a call, because the origin of a call makes a big difference, because there are many more variables, including the time of the day of the week, and so many more things that is the other end of the spectrum of complexity when it comes to rating. It's so much more complicated that we needed to do a big change in jBilling to actually accommodate for mobile telephony. So yeah, our rate cards provide a good solution for fixed telecom providers. One good thing that our rate cards had is they are very fast. They live in memory. They could be quite big, and still we put them in memory. Then there's a nice algorithm to find the right match, and it's all quite fast. Um, but we need to uh, take advantage of that design that is fast and easy to manage through the UI, and take it to the next level to account for much greater complexity. Let's take a look to the pieces that we put in place to enhance our rating and product resolution functionality. The first part is that we introduce the concept of the root tables. So root tables, it's a new, completely a new functionality that, in combination with rate cards that are aware of roots, then we combine those two, and you have a very powerful way to resolve a product or help rate cards be more manageable. Um, Based on this, then we still use the ability to match a product to a specific rate card, just like you saw me earlier, where I create a rate card and then assign it to a product. Well, we keep that, but we also enhance that a little bit. So there is a hierarchical way to do that, and also where we can say there is a specific number of units, and after that is that you use the rate card. Before that, you don't need to, because those units are included, are free in the plan that you are. Okay, so lots of new functionality to enhance um, product resolution and rating in the mediation. Let's start with the root tables. uh, Basically is the first of that two-part functionality. Root tables are basically optional, are are used to simplify lots of what we need to do in mediation, but you don't have to use them. Eventually, it's a group of variables that lead to a call definition. Will decrypt that sentence later. Um, but then the roots themselves do not define the price. What defines a price is the rate card. So the roots will be helping somehow, and then passing some information to the rate card so the rate card can actually determine the price. So let's zoom in to the root tables. What are root tables? What are used for? Root tables, you need them. You might need them for one or many of these 3 points. One is to simplify rate cards. Imagine if I have a rate card like the original rate card I had, but I want to start adding columns to it. So I account not just for the destination number that the customer dial, but also for other things like the origin, the where the call originated from, or the time of the day, or many other things. So if I have my original rate card here from jBilling 3.2, and I take a look, and if I start adding columns here, and more columns allow me for more combinations, my rate card will grow in size. There's going to be many more rows and more rates. So it could I could theoretically manage something incredibly complex just with rate cards that allow me for many columns, but I might end up with a huge table that it becomes unmanageable because there could be millions of prices there. So root tables will simplify rate cards. Um, Root tables also could help me resolve a product. And this is especially important in very complex scenarios where I have mostly where I have to resolve products in a context of mobile telecom. But also, root tables just could be lookup tables as well. Given a series of variables, go find something else that could be useful. It's sort of this is based on the cache functionality that jBilling had just a while ago. So root tables are based on that, and so they keep that functionality of being able to be used just as a lookup table. What they do not do is determine a price. Root tables do not give you a price when they work. They give you other things. They might give you a route, they might give you a product, or they might give you something else that you want to, but they're not supposed to be used to resolve pricing. Let's take a look to the to what is in a root table. So a root table doesn't have much as far as um, mandatory fields. So when you create a root table, you have to say the name of the root table and the root itself. What is it that is going to be out of a row in a table? Which one is going to be the next root, if that's going to be the case, because we can chain roots, and an arbitrary number of matching fields that each matching field then can have many different it has to have a few different uh, fields to define how is that matching field going to be used. A matching field is data that comes from a CDR. So a CDR then might bring me the cell phone tower where that call originated. So I might create then a matching field in my routing table that is okay, the tower being this or that, then that means to route the call in a particular way. So the bottom line here, because I don't want to get into the details of root tables, the bottom line is that root tables are completely configurable. You are not constrained to have certain number of columns. Like you here in this old rate card, you have 4 columns and that's it. In the new one, for root tables, you can have any number of columns. And so let me just show you quickly some easy root tables. And for that, I'm switching to jBilling 3.4. So if I go to here, I have for example, a root table here, and this is the CSV file how I created my root table, and this is matching fields that come with it. So if I take a look to this file, and I would see them in Excel, that's why reinvent the wheel. You can see here that I have the ID, the name, the next route, where is it going to go after resolving this? The product, I'm not using it. Route ID, I'm not using it. And record type. So here, what is going to happen is that the record type, this is the ad hoc or the configurable field that I'm using here. This is coming from the CDR record, is coming a record type. And this table is analyzing the record type and saying, if the record type is 5, then go to this other route, the call local roaming. And if it is a 32, it's a GRPS local, or if it is a 34, it's a GPRS local roaming. So it's just doing that. It's an initial piece of logic that determines, based on the record type, which kind of next route has to use. And like I have record type here, I could have many other columns to help me with the resolution of this particular route. We'll see a more complex example later. Actually, the example will be very complex and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, remember I had say initially that these are the 3 things that a root table can help for, right? Well, let's take a look to the first one, how to simplify rate cards. So I have a CDR, the CDR comes, the CDR has a bunch of fields, and then the CDR has some fields to resolve a route, and that route it's resolved. But then again, the CDR fields are used for the rate card along with the route to define the price. So that could be quite useful because it can help me reduce my rate card. The rate card is where the prices are. So I don't want that rate card to have the same price duplicated over and over again, just because if you call Vancouver is the same price as if you call Victoria, and is the same price as if you call Nanaimo, and if you keep calling British Columbia in Canada, it's really the same price. So instead of having a list of prices that are all the same, I might just want to have one. So the routes will help me with the definition of that, and then the rate card will just say, oh, if it is British Columbia, then is one price. Here's another way to see it. Say if I have Brazil, well, Brazil can have many prefixes. It can have for Rio, for Sao Paulo, it can have lots, but I might just want to use a very few number of prices for the whole Brazil. But um, I want to keep the option to maybe tomorrow um, I might want to give a different price for people that call Rio de Janeiro. So here's an example. Say I have a telco company that has long distance calls. There's thousands of potential destinations, but initially they are offering a plan where there's just 5 rates. It's super simple. It's mostly by continent. So if you're calling North America, it costs you 10 cents, and if you're calling Asia, it costs you 33 cents. So part of my requirements is that although right now I just have 5 rates, maybe tomorrow I will want to have a different plan with 10 rates, or with 1 rate, or with a million rates. Who knows? So my root table will be long, will be here I put like 9,000 rows that lists all the prefixes, and it gives them a route. So um, all the calls that start with one, I could just put them in the North America route. But then I just for my rate card, my rate card would be very simple. I'll just have the route North America is 10 cents. And if I tomorrow want to change the price on how much the calls are for North America, I have to change just one row. And if the day after I want to divide North America as US, Canada, and Mexico, three different rates, well, I can go to my route table and create a new route. Instead of NA for all of them, I would have to change them for um, Canada, US, and Mexico, and then I add two more prices in my rate card, and that's all I need to do. And all that addition, I can do it in Excel and simply upload the results in into jBilling. So copy and paste, simple CSV handling, um, all within the GUI. You don't need to write any code. So what the end result here is that I had simplified my rate cards by having a route table. My my route table will analyze the CDR, like the destination number will be analyzed by my route table, and the output of my route table will be a route. The input is the CDR data. I'm just taking the prefix here, but I could have taken many other things. And then my rate card takes as an input the route and potentially some information that comes from the CDRs, and the output of my rate card is the rate. So that's the first usage, which is to simplify rate cards. Next, well, so this is what I show you. It's good. It simplifies, and but it's mostly it mostly helps for simple scenarios. If I need to keep in mind that I need to eventually get to mobile pricing, right, where I have lots of different um, issues to deal with, and effectively I need to help with rate cards, with route tables. I need to help the product resolution. So let's dive in a little bit on this. The CDR gets in, and what I expect from this part is to know what kind of product this CDR is. Keep in mind that CDR is really an event, and that in for a cell phone could be all sorts of things. It could be that this is a phone call, but it could be that this is an SMS message, or it could be that this is a some data that the customer used because he was browsing the net, or an MMS, right? It could be all sorts of different things. So I need to resolve what is this product, what product this customer consumed because she used her cell phone. And that could be complicated because there's with mobile there could be roaming, with mobile there could be arrangements with other companies on how they do things, well, so all sort of different stuff. So I will use root tables, and I will use root tables combined with each other, in a, like linked in a hierarchical way. That's why it's branch roots. It's like a tree of roots, um, that as I define something in one route, I go to another one to further define. Maybe I know that this is data. Well, what kind of data this was? Okay, is this type of data. So um, I progress in the resolution of a product. Once the product is resolved, then I call my rate card or rate cards. It could be many, um, and with both, if I have a product and I have a bunch of prices in a rate card, then finally I can get my price, which is eventually what I want to have. And then an invoice can show up with, okay, well, you used your cell phone to use data when you were roaming, therefore you gotta pay $10 a megabyte, and that happened to me, so I know that somewhere happened in some billing system. All right. So to put it in a different way, you see, I have my mediation processor. This is the mediation logic that is running jBilling, and I'm doing my steps of guiding to an account, defining the date. But at one point, I need to resolve the product, and instead of having the product resolution be Java code instead inside of a mediation processor, which is the case of jBilling prior to jBilling 3.4, resolution of a product was mostly based on Java code in a plugin. Well, so now instead of doing that, what you can do in your mediation processor is use root tables that chain each other. So you just pass the CDR to a root table, and that root table will call other root tables until the product is resolved. And then I can keep going to determine the quantity and so on. And once I have the product, well, the product already has assigned a rate card, and so the pricing will happen in the core of JBilling. Now diving into an example. This is a practical example of a product resolution for actually a mobile operator. So as you can see, this is not trivial, right? Look, the CDR starts here and starts going through all sort of routes, literally paths, where eventually we define what kind of product do we have. Well, eventually it could be that there is a national and international voice, SMS and MMS product, or a call roaming product. Um, but for to get that, I need to analyze carefully the data that came in the CDR and start making decisions all over this tree. Those uh, potentially or theoretically, again, I could just use one humongous root table and resolve it that way. But that would make for a very hard product management in the future. It would be very hard to change prices or to add new products. So having multiple linked root tables linked in a hierarchical way is how this can work. And let me show you some here. So the call gets here, and I start with my root type. So here's the root type. This is actually I showed you earlier. I have I simply analyze the record type that comes from the CDR, and I define which root goes after this. After that, let's say that I got into the call roam, so I'm going to call the call roam record type, and that's what happens here. Call roam record type go to this other root table where other data from the CDR will be analyzed. You see the service ID and the MSC um, record type will be analyzed and is going to define a root ID and then call the next root, which for all of them you see is the same. But I have a root ID that will help me later with my next stop, which will be the to define the country. I have the record type. I know that this is roaming. This is what I did first. Then I check what kind of roaming it is, and now I'm checking which country this happened. So I go to the location country, and now my route table grew to basically every country. But at least I have all these countries in just one route table to define the 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 country based on roaming. I don't need to have this combined with pricing, combined with other uh, pieces of logic. It's just here I have the countries, 249 of them, and I'm just going to, based on the some data from the CDR. In this case, the data is the alpha 3. That's what is coming. I'm going to define the route ID, and then I'm jumping to the next one, which defines the region. And here's what the region is. The region will be either the EU or the world or Europe. And after that, I'm going to define the destination country, and so on and so forth. Right? You can have a lot of fun analyzing this type of situations. And truly, this is part of what happens in an implementation project for an MVNO, for example. Um, you first need to design how the logic is going to work of resolving the product. Look at this, and keep in mind that there's nothing here related to pricing. I'm just trying to resolve the product, and it could be complicated, but with jBilling, that complication, it's kept as simple as possible rather than make it really hard later to make any change. I We need to cover now the other side. Remember, one side is um, resolving products or using route tables to help simplify rate cards, but the other one is the actual rate cards. Rate cards, it's they are key because this is where the pricing happens. Um, Once we have a product, now we need a price. Route tables help us with the product, or they might if necessary. Um, but the rate cards eventually need to be there to define to find the price. So remember my rate cards that from jBilling 3.2. These rate cards are fairly simple. They just have the matching field, and that's pretty much it. They don't know many other things that need to be there, and let me show you those. This is not a complete list, but at least I have a bunch. The first one is the a rate card in jBilling now has not just matching fields, which is the last thing that you have here, is just like the root tables, that you can have as many fields as you want to use them for um, to use them to filter to find the right row based on data that came from the CDR. That's good, and we can use the destination number just like we used to. But there's many other fields that will help me price things simply. Um, One is the start date and end date, because you might have a price that starts and ends, and then you might want to start and end a price because you're changing one particular price. Then there is the event surcharge, and this is how much you charge just for the connection. Then the initial increment, and this is actually not accurate. It doesn't have to be in seconds. The unit is flexible. You can define a unit, but you can say X amount of my unit. If you define seconds, you can say, well, look, the 31st seconds cost you this amount of money. And then after that, we are segmenting in how many, let's say 6 seconds. Um, that's so if you do a 31 second, then you're paying for 36 seconds. If you, giving this example, right? If you are using, if you made a phone call that is 10 seconds, you pay for 30 seconds because that's the initial increment. If you make a phone call that is 30 seconds, you pay 30 seconds. And if you make a phone call that is 37 seconds, then you would pay the 30 plus two increments of 6. So you are paying for a 42-second phone call. Then we have a price, and this is per minute, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any unit. We'll take a look to that. And then the matching fields. So basically, you just don't have one price. You have, like we had here, the rate. You also, the rate card now understands that it is common to have an initial charge, like a connection charge, and then an initial section of units that is the minimum, and then a subsequent increment. That is key, especially for mobile operations. Um, So as far as I have some questions here about formatting. So as far as the formatting goes, or that is not part of the root tables and rate cards. That is part of the mediation in jBilling. So how how is the format of the CDR? That is something that when the mediation processor is created, and that's part of an implementation of jBilling, that is defined there. How are there 10 fields or 100 or 200 fields? What are the names of those fields? Where are they? Are there dates or integers or just text? Do we ignore them or not? All that is part of the mediation processor configuration, and that's out of scope for my presentation today. I'm focusing just on root tables and rate cards. All right, so let's take a quick look to how is it that we set up root tables and rate cards. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create. As you see, so we have a new a new menu, four actually new options, and we are going to need to set up a unit, a root, at least, and some rate cards. That's what we need to do. So root tables, we define them already. Um, Here I have one. This is the root table. Remember, so the another very important part that we added to jBilling this time is ability to test this quickly. So I have a root table here. Do I want to check if it works well or not? So you see, this is the root table that is uploaded there, and it's using the record type, right? Do I have record type here? Yeah. So it knows about the record type because that's one of those arbitrary fields that we call them matching fields. So it has this matching field, which is the record type. And if I say, well, if I put 99 there, what root do you resolve out of that? Nothing. Okay, let me see. Yeah, 99 is nothing. So how about a 32? 32 should be G, GPRS. So I go with a 32 and it resolves GPRS. So I can quickly test. Keep in mind too that this one is easy, this one just has 4 rows, this one has just one matching field, but I could have 10 matching fields and 10,000 rows. And I want to eventually check if my configuration is good, just a sample of them to see if it is resolving the right route or not, especially after I make some changes. Say I'm changing from charging the same for the whole Americas to different charges for South America and North America. Well, then I can quickly enter some of the data that the CDR will be coming with and see if the right route is resolved. So that is for as far as roots goes. The next thing to show you is the rating unit. The rating unit, I find this very exciting, very simple too, but it truly allows me to have rate cards that can rate whatever you want them to rate. Do you want to rate data? Do you want to rate time? Do you want to rate just units like SMS? Do you want to rate what do you want to rate? You can define it here, and when you define a new unit, you are defining the name. Say, for example, hours. No, well, that's not. Well, let's take an example already here. If I take the minutes, the time here, well, the unit name is minutes, but we're called the increment unit is seconds, and there's 60 of this of seconds in 1 minute. Data. There's megabytes. That's what we're going to price. So people, when they get their invoice, they will see how many megabytes they got. But we're going to the increments will be in kilobytes, and we know that there's 1024 kilobytes in 1 megabyte. So by defining this is that then my rate cards will uh, know, because when I well, this is an old rate card. Here's how the new ones, because we maintain backwards compatibility, so the old rate cards still are there, but I have my new rate card here where this is pricing time. Therefore, I can when I get the unit, I and I get a price for a unit, I know how to divide that and what kind of fractions to use, how to deal with increments, how to deal with the initial charges, what's the minimum an event can be. That type of thing I can easily resolve. All right, let's see if I can test one of these rate cards. Um, see what is it that I have here. So I have, well, a super simple rate card, but you can see that I already have the name, the searcher, the initial increment, the subsequent increment, and how much does it cost, a route ID as well. So, and this one is the flat, um, I think is this one. So um, let's try to test it. And if I say duration would be how many quantities of this it's coming from the CDR. So if I say the minimum, like 20, well, for 20, um, I should be charged also 1 cent. And I'm not sure I'm looking at the same rate card here. No, let's see this one. I think this one is better. Okay, so there you go. So it's 10 cents that would charge me for this. If I put a route that would not be correct, it tells me you don't have any for this. And that could be really useful sometimes to troubleshoot why an invoice is wrong, why this event didn't work out as expected. So you can enter the data from that CDR in the matching fields and check, okay, what's oh, I don't have any price for that. So it really allows you to check that quickly. If we do 61, well, it would be it should charge me for 70, right? Seconds. And there you go. So it's 10 cents. It's one. Um, it's 10 cents plus the fraction, but not of 1 second, but of 6 seconds. So you can quickly check how much a price would work with your route card and your route table and your rate card, and eventually a rate card like the old rate cards have to go into products. So we have um, new pricing models to deal with this. You see, in this case, I'm using a root rate card, product to rate card, pricing field to rate card. There is root-based hierarchical rate. There's a number of new pricing models that allow me to um, price something based on potentially very complex complex logic, but that is not um, in Java code, that is not in some obscure system or hard code in the database. I can model fairly complex scenarios with my root tables, with my rate cards, assign that to a product, and then mediate traffic with all this running really fast, all in memory in jBilling.